lead? You sound like a cop.
Don't you mean Spider Cop?
Today I'm bringing you guys my first review in a very long time. It's going to be my review for Spider-Man PlayStation 4 developed by Insomniac Games, and we're going to do it a bit differently when compared to the other content I produce on this channel. I usually make very lengthy reviews. Like, I could really dive into a game, 20-30 minute reviews, because I like to cover all of the important key components of a game like I've done with today's Spidey review. That means that editing a video like that is going to take a long time, and frankly that's just not in my current upload schedule, my current content schedule, and reviews aren't the primary focus here on this channel, so it doesn't make sense to dedicate that much time to them. So my compromise is, let's do audio reviews. Let's do like a review cast where people can just put it on, listen to the review in the background. There's no video spoilers, there's no spoiler in the review itself, and they can just listen to the review while they're at work, at the gym, working on their own projects at home. If you like to see beautifully edited video reviews, they're all over YouTube. Go check them out. You know, you can watch those there. But if you're someone who appreciates something you can pop on in the background and just listen to and hear the discussion on it, that's what I'm going to focus on doing. So I can still produce those lengthy, in-depth reviews that I like to do for games that I'm absolutely crushing on, absolutely in love with, like Spider-Man. And I can also actually make them happen frequently alongside of my other content. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. You know, again, this is just the format I'm going to produce them in. All of my other stuff will continue to be full-blown edited video projects, but this is the way I'm going to do my reviews as a little side project here on the channel. So, without further ado, my review of Spider-Man PlayStation 4. Typically when I sit down to do a preview, bring you my first impressions, do a review of a game, I like to hone in on one component within that game's design that really stood out to me as the glue. The thing that held everything else together, that made the entire experience work. Without that specific component, there's a very good chance that the game just wouldn't be what it is. And obviously that makes a lot of sense because games are the sum of all of their parts. And when the individual parts are often as strong as the glue, you get a really outstanding experience. An experience not unlike the one we're going to talk about today with my review of Spider-Man PlayStation 4, developed by Insomniac Games. Now, if we had to hone in on just what that glue would be with Spider-Man, I think a lot of you would be able to call me out on this already. You'd say, Tony, you're going to talk about web swinging, and you're damn right. I'm going to talk about web swinging. The movement matters so much in Spider-Man, and Insomniac absolutely crushed it. It is, without a doubt, the thing that makes like 80% of this game work. I'll be honest, the story, the characters, the presentation, the combat, they're all really, really good on their own. But I think the story and the characters could be just laid out in a sort of telltale fashion. I'd still love the hell out of this game because the writing feels fresh. It's fantastic. We'll talk more about that later. The combat, though, is absolutely strengthened by the web swinging. It's strengthened by the freedom of movement in this game. And you can easily jump into Spidey and just web swing for hours. It doesn't get old. You know, I'm over 20 plus hours in the game now, right? It's not boring. It will never get boring. Much like the movement in a game like Titanfall, or once you start mastering something like strafe jumping or bunny hopping in a game like Quake, it's always addictive. It's always satisfying. There's always a layer of skill to it that keeps you coming back for more. And I think that's the big thing about what Insomniac has done here, is that this is, at the higher end, skill-based movement. Yes, you can just jump in and hold the right trigger and swing about, but if you really want to go fast and master the individual components of that movement system, you can. And the game rewards you for it. The game even presents you with challenges eventually that rewards you for going fast, for being the quickest Spidey this side of New York City. It feels amazing, and it makes the game work, because everything else we're going to talk about today, when it comes to quest design, world design, again, combat, ties back into having that freedom of movement. It's what makes hunting for the backpacks so enjoyable. Not only is the lore inside of the backpacks good, but getting there to get the backpack, it's good, it's fun, it feels amazing, and it never stops feeling amazing. Now, when you're web swinging your way through New York City, of course, you're going to notice the world design. And I gotta be honest, I don't know how this game runs on the PlayStation 4. The standard PlayStation 4 is where I played Spider-Man. And the fact that I saw maybe one noticeable frame drop in 20 plus hours blows my mind. The level of density here, the visual quality, the reflection on the glass windows on the skyscrapers and the buildings, the sense of just realism, the focus on details here is absolutely staggering. I mean, this feels like a Spider-Man New York City, right? It's got the colorful, like, just cheap low-tier villains running around trying to rob storefronts and getting involved in car chases. But it's also got the civilians going about their daily lives. And the fact that you can interact with them as Spider-Man just brings the world to life even more. I mean, going back in the day, the first big Spider-Man game I remember playing that really blew me away was the Spider-Man film game, the one based after the Tobey Maguire film. On GameCube, I played it. And, you just shot your webs straight into the air and you swung from the clouds. You couldn't even go down into the city. It was just like, here, everything happens on the rooftops. So when you're playing this and you're able to stay up there, you feel like that's where you belong. But eventually you can just pop your way down into the city, land in the street, and everybody's like, hey, it's Spider-Man, shoot some webs, bro. Or you can run up and high-five someone or give them a handshake or awkwardly maybe hug them, not hug them because you're Peter Parker. And sometimes humans are awkward, and that's totally a real and wonderful thing this game does. It is a piece of magic. That's what Insomniac has built here. And the fact that anyone would even consider criticizing them over a puddle blows my mind. And you should be ashamed of yourself. Go eat like a tub of peanut butter and then lick it off your face like a dog, because that just seems like the only reasonable torture for someone who would think that this game is any less than incredible when it comes to its visual presentation and its world design, because it is simply just that. That world design definitely fuels the web swinging even more. Like having a beautiful playground to explore and to spend time in when you've got a great movement system to actually do things inside of that playground really brings the world together. And that's what I talked about when I said that this is a game that has that glue, but the parts that the glue is holding together are just as strong as the glue itself in many cases. There's just so many good things happening here. It just keeps you grinning. Like, Spider-Man is a game for me, much like recently God of War, where I find myself slapping my desk in excitement because it made me smile just 15 minutes after I had just got done smiling about something. Let's talk quest design. So this is obviously where the meat of the game comes together and we start to see the core gameplay loop. The movement system, the world design, and now all the things you do with the movement system within that designed world. You've got your main missions. This is where all of the significant large-scale storytelling happens. You've got your side missions, which are used early on to introduce you to collectibles, crafting, and some of the challenges. But you also have actual side missions that will have you helping out many civilians or members of the police force, for example. And these are really fleshed out and great. They feel like the sort of standard, this is what Spider-Man does on a daily basis type routine stuff. And I like that. It's cool to get that side of Spidey where it's not just grandiose, we're fighting the greatest of villains. It's like, no, Spider-Man's just helping this person out because their husband was blackmailed. Or, this person needs some help with this thing, right? There's like a low tier crime fighting side of Spidey we get to see in the side missions, and I totally dig that. You do eventually start unlocking a bunch of challenges in the game as well. And the thing I like about all this stuff, so the side missions, the challenges, the backpacks, the collectibles we'll talk about in detail in a moment, is that they're introduced into the game in a really nice flow. Not everything is just thrown at you at the start of the game, and you don't just run through the main story and then everything is given to you at the end. It's all paced out very well. It's essentially given to you as the game feels you need it. So I unlocked a challenge, a new set of challenges in the game, I think at like the 12-hour mark. It was just like, I hadn't really been exploring that much at that point in time, and I like stumble across this now. It's a part of the main story, introduces a new character, gives me a new set of challenges that are focused on movement and going fast. It even has a leaderboard thing to it, and it just kind of like snuck its way in. So you go from thinking, I've unlocked everything I can possibly do in this game to, oh wow, there's something new. Ooh, and it's all about movement. Give me more. And then you get lost in it for like an hour and a half, right? It's just that good. The pacing is so well done here with how things are layered into the experience. You never really get overwhelmed. And I think that's really great open world game design, because my biggest issue with any open world game is that things are given to you way too fast. There's way too much of them. They don't actually have that much value when you think about how they connect to the core gameplay loop or what value they might have for the story. They're just kind of there as fluff, right? More stuff than you could ever actually want to complete in a reasonable amount of time. Spider-Man does not do that. Does not do that. Now, the collectibles come in many forms, but the backpacks are the biggest one. Backpacks are going to allow you to actually find a specific item within these backpacks that Peter has left around the city as Spider-Man. They're going to give you a piece of lore, which I love. You can go back and read that lore at any point in time. But they, again, also give you a resource that ties back into crafting gadgets and different Spider-Man suits. That is the thing about this game. Everything ties back into the core gameplay or the storytelling. Whether it's lore or crafting, it all comes back together. So you're completing these things not just because they're fun or because the movement tech is great and you don't mind hunting backpacks for 3 hours, but because they tie into the gameplay itself. The backpacks are also, I think, a really great opportunity to see the level of detail that Insomniac has injected into this game. And I'm going to make one reference point here. It's kind of spoilerish, but a lot of people have been asking themselves, why does Spider-Man have so many backpacks? Why are there like 50 or 20? I forget how many backpacks there are. There's not that many, actually. It's a good, fair amount located throughout the city. And if you continue to collect backpacks, you'll eventually find one that has a Wilson Fisk Science Award trophy inside of it. So Spidey's going to go on to tell you why he accepted the trophy. He couldn't not accept it for fear of suspicion, but he didn't take the money. However, he did accept the lifetime supply of backpacks. It all comes together, right? Like, they're so into the details in this game. I mean, if you think about something, you question it, chances are Insomniac has an answer to that question somewhere in the game. It's just that good. Let me give you another example. When you kick bad guys off the rooftops, you think to yourself, wow, that guy just totally got obliterated. Spidey, what is wrong with you? As it turns out, there's actually a Spidey gadget sort of lore background piece where that individual gets attached to the nearest building, hopefully safe and sound, right? Until the fire department or the scaffolding crew shows up with their window cleaning rig and peels this guy off the side of the building. So just keeping with the realm of like immersion, quote unquote here, they ensure that no one ever actually smashes into the ground. Like, what? Insomniac, what? I love it, man. I love that focus on detail. Now, I want to talk about game length because this ties very much into our side missions, our main mission. Spider-Man is not an obscenely long game. It shouldn't be. And I greatly respect the fact that developers like Insomniac and Santa Monica working on God of War have chosen to not make their open world games long and lengthy and obscenely large for the sake of letting people say that I spent $60 on this game and I got 500 hours out of it. Because I think that's a load of BS. And I can't stand that people think that a $60 game should be guaranteed to get them some obscene number of hours. I want quality over quantity any day of the week. God of War gave us that so well. Just shrunk down, tailored that open world, made sure that everything we did had a purpose, tied back into the main experience, much like Spider-Man has done, and that everything felt doable. When you look at a lot of these crazy open world games, you look at Far Cry, you look at Assassin's Creed, you see the number of people who even complete the main story when it comes to achievements, and the percentage is obscenely low. It's so low because there's just too much crap being thrown at them. They never even make it there. You got a million side quests they got to do or could possibly do. You got collectibles all over the damn map, and the numbers that they all exist in are just way too large. No one really has time for that. And even if you do, you're not getting actual value out of that. It's a time sink is what it is. I don't want my open world games to be a time sink. Spider-Man and God of War are sort of resetting my expectations and hopefully the expectations of everyone else in the industry itself when it comes to what an open world game should do in terms of length, because it's just not that. Like, the number of backpacks in the game, it's not that large. You could collect the backpacks in, I think, a couple hours, if that, like an evening of playtime if you wanted to. There's a lot of stuff here. You don't have to do all of it, but even if you did, it wouldn't take you that much time. And it just sets the game up, again, to be paced out very, very well, where you feel like, okay, I'll go do this for a little bit, and then I'll go back to the main story. And Insomniac does a really good job of giving you, like, emotional incentive to go back to the main storyline. They talk a lot about, this significant thing's going to happen, and Spider-Man's kind of like, I'll be there right away. And a part of you just feels like, well, yeah. Unless between here and there, like a firefight breaks out in the streets, I'll stop and I'll definitely help with that. I'm going to get there because it's important to me. You might spend a little bit of time engaging with collectibles, and the game has like key points within the story where it basically says to you, I should relax and, I got time to blow off here. I should work on my skills, or I should help the people of the city. Spider-Man will say this to himself. It's just none of it's mandatory. You can stop doing the main story at any point in time and come back to it. It's not actually on a timer, but again, there's that emotional, psychological timer the game instills in you that I think does a good job in letting people keep pace with everything that's happening and never really becoming too overwhelmed. And of course, it just works because the game itself isn't actually overwhelming. Let's talk combat. It's obviously a huge part of the game, just as important as movement. And it's really good. I mean, what can I say? This is, I think, the first time that a developer has really brought a sort of expansion or an evolution on that, like, 2-button Arkham Asylum combat that Rocksteady made so popular. You know, square to attack in this case, circle to dodge. You can time your dodges for precision dodges. You can get single button combos. But then you have all of the gadgets that Spider-Man has now, right? They're sort of like Batman's gadgets, but I think a lot of them kind of lift the experience up a little bit more. And where Batman often works better when you're just focusing on really crushing out those combos, there's a lot of ways in which you can play Spider-Man at any point in time. There are stealth missions, which I think stealth actually works really well with Spidey. But when you do get into combat, you just kind of feel like you can play it how you want to play. You could even disengage, let the people lose you, come back in, do some stealth. You know, just all the gadgets. I don't know what it is. I just feel like I have more player choice here than I do with Batman. I think that's the big thing, is it just comes down to everything happening in this big open world and having all of these tools that Spidey has, specifically the movement stuff, where I just feel like my player freedom is higher than it's ever been in an Arkham game. And, you know, this is just what I'm saying about Spider-Man. I'm not knocking down anything Rocksteady ever did. I think their combat system was amazing, and I think the gadgets that Batman had to choose from feel fantastic. I'm talking on a personal level here. There's just something about the way Spidey is tied to all of his gadgets, the way the game presents itself, where I felt like I had more player freedom. And I guess I just enjoyed the combat more, to the point where I spent more time wrapping my head around how I could best use the gadgets, how I could best use the different moves to stay in the air. And I think a lot of this does come down to the focus meter. So the focus meter, I think, is a really intelligent piece of design, because you gain focus by doing attacks. Certain attacks, especially in air attacks, gain more focus. There are modifiers you can equip to your suits to gain more focus as well. That focus meter, though, is used to trigger your different specials that you'll unlock as you unlock different suits in the game, or it's used to self-heal. So you have a choice to make. You know, you get in the fight and you do your best to not get hit, and you save all your focus for attacks, but maybe something goes wrong. Maybe suddenly you make a mistake, and rather than just feeling like, oh, this whole fight just kind of got thrown into the bin, I'm probably going to die soon, you can recover from it, get back into the fray, turn the tide, get back into your focus mode again, you know, get your combos down. It just feels like there's a lot of chances to recover, and the combat isn't easy. You know, playing on amazing difficulty, which is the middle of the road option, it gets challenging. You know, it punishes you if you make mistakes, but having that extra backup, I think, feels really good. You know, I think it removes a lot of the restrictions that you might have otherwise. You don't feel like you get so caught up playing it safe that you spend more time experimenting with gadgets and with environmental attacks and with taking objects from the environment and smashing them into bad guys' faces. It's just giving me more opportunities to get really good at the combat, to develop a deep appreciation for how combat can flow and how you can make it look good. This is really a game where you can make everything look good as you want to make it look. You know what? Whether you're web swinging or engaging in combat, you make it look good by just doing the things you want to do in the order you want to do them and trying to do them right and well. That's that player freedom aspect that I'm trying to hit on here. And it's incredibly satisfying. You know, I think it's the most fun I've had with an Arkham style combat system, honestly, since like Arkham City. You know, since those like Batman games. I really did enjoy the combat back then, but this just feels more enjoyable. And honestly, for everything I just said, it's hard to pinpoint why. It's a game feel thing, right? I think everything just comes together here within that combat system, within Spidey's abilities and his gadgets. It just feels good. It's just a feel-good combat system. That's the best way I can put it. Let's move on and talk story. Let's talk about the characters, the overall presentation of the storytelling, because this is another area, once again, where I think Spider-Man absolutely crushes it. First and foremost, Yuri Lowenthal. He's the voice of Spider-Man here, and I can't unhear him as Spider-Man. I've seen a lot of people say this, and I couldn't agree more with them. He's just incredible. I mean, his voice acting is fantastic, and the writing for this game feels so fresh. Like, Spider-Man, I think, is the perfect character to to launch a different kind of writing, I want to say. I think this is something that could be talked on in its own right, but Spidey feels so human. You know, I think often video game characters in video games, even characters in film, they're not written to be human. And Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is a distinctly human character by design. You know, he's just an individual. He's slightly awkward. That's who he is, right? So it works with this kind of writing where we now have a character that just feels more natural. Doesn't feel like everything they say has been planned out 100 years before they were even born. They knew they were going to say that, and they've had all the world and all the time to practice it. That's not who Spider-Man is. That's not who Peter Parker is. And we get to see that awkwardness, that just cheesy Spider-Man humor, and it all works so well here. And it makes you grin, man. It makes you laugh. It makes you smile. It makes you really fall for this version of Spider-Man. I think more than I've ever fallen for a version of Spider-Man. Like, I love Tom Holland. I think he was amazing as Spider-Man. And I even liked some of the other characters, some of the other individuals who have played Spider-Man over the years. But I think this particular Spider-Man is the best Spider-Man has ever been. And it's inside of a video game. And I think that's really, really cool. We also get to see the empathy of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and I think that's another fantastic trait that is distinctly Spider-Man. It's not to say that other superheroes don't have empathy, but I think it's just something that comes across, again, in a more human fashion, something that feels more relatable. And I don't think characters always need to be exceptionally relatable to be powerful, but in this case, it goes hand in hand with Spider-Man, and I just love it, you know? The humor especially. It's just, how often can you say that cheesy humor is well written in a game? I think typically when people say the humor is cheesy, they're talking about humor that was supposed to just be normal humor that comes across as cheesy because of the way it was written. Now, this is Spider-Man being the cheesy individual he is. And Spider-Cop will simply never be forgotten. Plain and simple. Now, there is another layer to the story, and that is multiple perspectives. But honestly, I don't want to dive too deep into any single one of them. Know that you will play Spider-Man. Know that you will play Peter Parker. You get to see both sides of the coin. You get to see how Peter as Peter and Peter as Spider-Man has to deal with being both of these individuals at the same time sometimes. And there's another layer of detail that has been introduced here from Insomniac that, again, I find to be exceptionally impressive. When you're playing as Spider-Man, there are actually two separate lines of dialogue. So dialogue that's been recorded twice, one for his stationary state and one for when he's active or under exertion. So if you're standing on a rooftop talking to Aunt May, trying to play it off as Peter Parker, even though you're currently on the top of the Empire State Building as Spider-Man, he'll talk normal and just be like, okay, yeah, I may, I'll be there in a little bit. But if you start swinging off the side of that building, diving hundreds and hundreds of stories down to the city streets below you, he'll start to talk as if he's actually swinging through the air and under exertion. The dev team actually came out, and what they did with this was recorded the same lines twice, one exerted, one not exerted, and then used some of the tech in their engine to seamlessly transition them. This game has so many of those small details that help bring the experience to life. They're just littered throughout the game, and I could sit here and talk about them for probably another hour, but I won't. I will say this, if you own a PlayStation 4, Spider-Man is worth every single penny. I think much like God of War, this is a game for me that I would recommend to anyone, Spider-Man fan or not, because you're just going to get an outstanding gameplay, outstanding storytelling experience, all injected into a beautiful and absolutely breathtaking piece of world design. If you are planning on getting a PlayStation 4, this just adds one more first-party exclusive title to the roster of reasons it is so damn worth buying a PlayStation 4. Do yourself a favor, pick this up when you get your PlayStation 4. You will absolutely not regret it. If you guys have any questions, thoughts of your own, try and keep it spoiler-free down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching my review of Spider-Man PlayStation 4, developed by Insomniac Games, and I will see you in the next one.